So today, Jojo Hancock is very sweetly going to have a chat with me about, well, she is founder of Yoga Creative and has launched this new menopause workshop, yoga workshop. So we'd love to just hear about, well, everything about it, and what made you decide to start focusing on menopause yoga.
Oh, Panda, do you know, it's such a pleasure to be talking to you about this subject that's so dear to my heart. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share some of this. Um, Gosh, I've been a yoga practitioner for 20 years, and it has absolutely sustained me through all the ups and downs of life, through my career, my family, and yoga in general. The word means union. It means a bringing together, and it was a word, a concept that founded 3,000 years ago in ancient India, and was back then the yogas were the medics, and they were the pioneers of discovering how to self-heal by bringing our minds, our bodies, our spirits into balance. And so the practice of that has sustained me. In my mid-40s, I was at the peak of my career. I had a global directorship role at a leading art auction house. I loved my job. I loved the people I worked with. I thrived. I'm like you know, really strong, resilient woman. And I began to struggle. And I began to struggle with my self-esteem. I began to lose my confidence in decision making. I got chronic headaches, fatigue. I had bowel problems. I had, we talk about things quite graphically in menopause yoga.
Yeah.
I had uterine infections,
Yeah.
and I went to the doctors, and they did a lot of investigations. I had a test for bowel cancer. I was offered antidepressants for psychological disturbances. I was offered antibiotics for my uterine infections. I had a frozen shoulder. I did an MRI scan. I had injections. I can't remember what the word is now, but I had
Cortisone.
Yes, cool. Yeah, steroid injections actually in my shoulder.
Yes.
None of it really helped.
No.
But the only thing I knew that did help was my yoga. And then the pandemic happened, and I was able to deepen my practice and took my teacher training. And through that process, I began to notice that all these health symptoms, mind, body, spirit health symptoms, were melting away. And I thought, okay, what's going on here? And then last year, Davina McCall did her incredible program, Sex, Myths and Menopause. And it was like, wow,
yes,
okay, exploding the myths, exploding the misinformation. And I realized that in my mid-40s, I was very definitely perimenopausal, and that all those things I was experiencing are classic symptoms of this transition, this huge transition we go through of losing our hormones, all the fluctuations and the loss of the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, and the impact that that has on our bodies. So I thought, wow, okay, there's something here. And was very lucky to be in contact with Dr. Louise Newson and the Newson Clinic, she's like the leading GP menopause specialist. And she works with Petra Coveney, who is a senior yoga instructor. And Petra, in conjunction with the Newson Clinic, developed a system of holistic support to support women through their yoga, through their menopause journeys. And yoga is one part of that. And I've been lucky enough to train with Petra, and I'm so excited because it has transformed my understanding of me, where I actually am, and how I can positively journey through it. And there's so much we can do, and we sit in silence because we think we're fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's this attitude that we have, this Western approach to menopause, approach to sort of women in their mid-40s. That we can cope, and we're resilient, and we just carry on, and we're resistant to recognizing the changes.
Gosh, it's all fascinating, isn't it? And I mean, so what are the main ways that this menopause yoga can sort of help? What are the benefits? that you see or you found yourself and you know can see in other people who are practicing it?
I think that's really so important to understand, that it's not just yoga.
No.
The menopause yoga is the name of the workshop, and it takes a totally holistic view. So it's come about through years of evidence-based research looking at Western medical science and the wisdom of Eastern well-being, and it brings the two together. And one of the first things that we do in the workshop is to notice ourselves. And to really, it's about, I mean, yoga is about an inward journey, an inner awareness, and that's why it's so potent. It's so powerful to apply this, the philosophical approach of yoga to menopause. And so we look at ourselves and we say, okay, what's really happening? Not what I'm expecting to happen at this point in my life, not what the society is expecting to happen of us.
What you're told is going to happen.
What you're told, exactly. And so we spend time exploring the symptoms, of which there are over 40, by the way.
Wow.
You know, so we've heard about hot flushes, we've heard about brain fog, we know we get joint pain, we know that our hormones drop, and that we have the option to replace those with HRT. But there is so much more to this. We know that our sleep goes haywire, that our libido goes, that we get pelvic floor issues, we get vagina issues, and it does get graphic. And so many things, and this loss of sense of self. And so identifying those and we all have a different journey, and it happens at different times in our lives as well. So I think it's important to acknowledge that some women go through this really early, through whether it's through premature ovarian insufficiency that can happen as early as in your 20s, or through medical intervention. But generally, we look at the time period of about 40 onwards, and it can go through till about 60. So it's a very significant time in our lives.
Big chunk.
Perimenopausal symptoms can kick in quite early. But knowing where we're at, knowing what our symptoms are, is the first stage. So education is part of the workshop. That then empowers you to then take positive steps to support those specific symptoms. And in the workshop, we look at from a holistic perspective. So yes, there is the Western medical science, the HRT, and we explore all the options around that, of which there are many. And then we look at the Eastern well-being from an Ayurveda perspective, which is a whole lifestyle, diet, exercise as medicine. We look at complementary therapies, natural therapies, and from a diet perspective, we want to try and get as much from what we put in our body, but there are also supplements which can really support us through this change. And of course, exercise. And so yoga, menopause yoga, feeds into that whole holistic perspective.
So it's not really, so your workshops are not just the yoga, really, are they? It's the whole package.
Has to be exactly, that's exactly right.
Diet.
It has to be the whole package, because we want to step through this, stepping through into the wholeness of what comes next. We want to be a whole, really acknowledge the wholeness of our person. It's such a great word to use in relation to this. So one thing I want to mention is from the traditional Chinese medicine view menopause is a natural transition. We know that it's a natural transition, but it's not an illness, although sometimes you know the Western perspective would have us think that it's an illness. But it can present illness with it if we don't take care of ourselves. And part of that is perception. So part of the workshop is how we perceive the menopause and how we approach it. And traditional Chinese medicine compares this natural event in our lives to the cycle, nature's cycle of seasons. So if we think about spring, a first spring as our puberty, our time of growth and youth, and summer as our womanhood, a time of fertility, fecundity, of action. And then autumn is our perimenopause. And it's a time in autumn when we have a chance to reflect and look at what no longer serves us, what we can let go like the tree letting go of the leaves,
Yes.
back too much energy, and the putting down roots, bedding down. And then we look at winter as the menopause, which is a hindsight one day, where the previous 12 months you've had no period. So the menopause is actually just one day. And that's our wintering, when we need to restore and rest and do less, so that we can then step through to what they call the second spring.
Oh, thank goodness there's a second
spring. And you know what, in modern life, I know exactly that if we look, and they look forward to it. So in the East, they look forward to this, whereas here we're like, oh, you know,
depressing.
Like, the beginning of the end, right? And we get old and things dry up and things stop working. But actually, if we care for ourselves, and we have 3 mantras in menopause yoga. So the first is rest, do less, reduce stress. So that is how we approach the yoga. And to talk specifically about, we do move in the class as well. So it's a 3-hour workshop. There is a discussion around symptoms and a sharing of knowledge and signposting to information around all these holistic things I've mentioned. There's a 90-minute yoga practice. And this yoga practice is very simple, very accessible to all women. It's not power yoga, it's not Ashtanga yoga. It's been very specifically adapted to use the poses in a way that address specific symptoms. So for example, perimenopause, one of the key symptoms can be hot flushes. So we have designed, or Petra has designed this workshop that uses poses that release heat from our bodies. But also our fascia gets very dry, because estrogen doesn't just affect our fertility area, it affects every part of our body, our brain, our heart, our lungs, our bones, our fascia, our cells, our tissue in our body, our digestive, our gut. And the yoga we can do, we use actually yin style yoga for those kind of symptoms, because it allows a deepening of the stretch that allows the body to release into it, feel safe to release into it, which allows the fascia to start to be activated and be nourished. We also have very specific breathing techniques. So the pranayama in yoga is well known. And these breathing techniques come from Ayurveda, from an Indian Ayurveda, where breath is the life force. And we can use it to draw energy into a specific part of our bodies to release tension. And so there are breathing techniques, very simple breathing techniques that I can teach you, that can instantly affect a hot flush, that can instantly release that menopause rage, that moment where we feel for no reason whatsoever, you're just going to scream. And someone's all they've done is asked you what's for supper.
That's often the straw that breaks the camel's back.
It is. And we're thinking, where did that come from? But it's a vasomotor symptom. It's a rising, it's like the hot flush, it rises up from our solar plexus, rises up, and we can use our breath to control it. Breath work for anxiety, for calming down the mind, calming down the body. And they're very simple techniques. And all of this, the yoga poses, the breath work, is designed very simply so that you can then take it home. It's like a toolkit that you can take home and practice, so that in the moment when you need it, you have it there. And just even that, knowing we've got something to support us in the moment, is really empowering. And I think that takes the fear away and gives us some element of control when really we're feeling really out of control. Stuff's happening to our body, and unless we understand it, learn the tools to manage it, practice them, and then use them in the moment, that's a beautiful way of taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
So the second mantra is to nourish and nurture. So the other element of the workshop is restorative yoga, and these are poses where we take you into a particular position using a lot of props. You can see some of my props behind me.
Yes, yeah.
I use a lot more as well. And the lovely thing, we do these workshops in person and on Zoom. But on Zoom, you're using your own belongings, your own pillows, your cushions, your blankets. Your dog even can sit on top of you to support you. You know? So it's a lovely way of doing this, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by being propped up in a position, maybe we're cooling off the heat that rises up to the chest, and we're opening up the chest, but in a totally supported way where you feel safe. Yeah. And when you feel safe, you can release and let go of the tension in the body. And that allows a message to go through your neurotransmitters up to your brain that says, okay, I can come out of this stress response, this chronic fight or flight. And when we're in fight or flight mode, I'm sure you know, Panda, that
yes, only two.
All our other systems shut down.
Yeah.
So our lymphatic system, our digestive system, our endocrine system, our hormone system, our fertility system, our digestive system, all these things close down. We don't need them when we're in fight or flight. We need cortisol, we need adrenaline, we need the muscles to tense in and be ready to run or flee or fight.
Yeah.
And in caveman times, they went out, they did that, they came back, they relaxed. But in our days of chronic, non-life-threatening stress, we have stuck in these patterns. So the restorative yoga takes us to this beautiful place. And I have to say, when I take my students there, they never want to come out of it.
I bet.
Just want to stay there, where the body feels safe to let go. And it's a very nourishing and nurturing experience. And again, these are poses that we can help you understand how to do at home.
Yeah.
And there are certain times of the day when certain poses can be really helpful. So that 3 o'clock slump, in about a couple of hours, okay? You think, and the I'm fine thing clicks in. You say, right, I'll have a cup of coffee, or I'll have a piece of chocolate, or I'll do something to keep going.
Keep me going.
Push through. I've got to keep going. I've got to keep doing more. Got to achieve the to-do list. Do that next thing.
Yeah.
And actually our body's saying to us, no, you need to rest.
Yes.
You need to do less. You need to reduce stress.
Yeah.
So that's the time to go into one of these poses. It takes 5 minutes.
It's nothing, is it? Just 5 minutes.
It's nothing. And we can practice these little moments. We call them mini pauses.
Okay.
Take these little mini pauses through the day. Take a breath work, 5 minutes of breath work. If we're feeling anxious about a meeting we're about to go into, you can take 5 minutes, and it totally changes your perspective. So there's so much. You can tell I can talk so much about it. I want to allow you to ask your questions as well.
So interesting. Would you say though that people need, I mean, for instance, I've done Pilates, I haven't really done yoga. Does it matter if, we haven't done yoga before when you're doing these workshops? I mean, if you've got somebody who is a complete, beginner, is that a problem, or do you sort of explain? I mean, I don't know how complicated these different poses and moves are.
It's a great question, because you look on social media today, and there are so many different types of yoga practices out there, and gorgeous people with beautiful figures going into contorted poses, and it makes you think, oh, that's not for me.
Yes. Yeah.
And so this practice has been designed to be very accessible. The poses are very simple, and it's accessible for all women, because that is that we can't avoid going through this.
No.
We all go through menopause. We all go through it in a different way, but we all go through it. So we want everyone to be able to feel welcome and able to take part. So in each of the poses, we offer variations, because there will be some people who have a yoga practice who want to go deeper into the pose.
Yes.
There will be some people who've never done a sun salutation or a downward dog. So we take it it's very accessible.
Yes.
And no, you don't need to have any yoga experience.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And I mean, how long does it take to start feeling the benefits of the yoga? Is it sort of almost immediate, or I guess does it take a bit of practice to get the breathing right and to get the...
Yeah, that's a good point. So there are layers of benefits, and there are certainly instant layers. You will come to the workshop and come away feeling empowered with information, feeling a greater sense of self-knowledge of where you're at with your menopause, and having some tools and techniques that you can use immediately. The practice deepens your value of it, I guess. So you begin to realize how it works for you. And some things will work for some people and some things will work for others. Which is why we have lots of different types of ways of doing it. The breath work is designed to work instantly because it's to address an immediate need. The yoga will help your sense of well-being, and it will help your nervous system draw you back into this homeostasis, this place of balance instantly, within the workshop. The side effects that we get from yoga, the strengthening of the muscles, the toning of the waist, all these wonderful things, maybe a bit of weight loss, that of course accumulates over time and it gets more and more. So there are layers of benefits.
Yeah, okay. And would you say that, well, this yoga will help you physically? It will help you physically, won't it? Because I suppose the symptoms that you have, the physical symptoms, will hopefully lessen or dissipate. But it's very much mental as well, isn't it? Your mental well-being and stability.
Yeah, gosh, absolutely, Panda. And I think that's one side of the menopause that isn't so much understood. The physical symptoms are very well known. Mental symptoms, and often it starts with the mental symptoms.
Yes.
So often in our perimenopause, it's our progesterone that gets involved in our cognitive function, and that can drop first. In fact, the estrogen goes up before it starts to drop, and that fluctuation causes all sorts of issues. But because we're not getting hot flushes, we don't necessarily associate it with menopause. We think there's other stuff going on, particularly that's what happened to me. And so the physical symptoms, absolutely. One thing I do want to say before I answer the full question is that yoga won't replace your hormones.
No.
So it can't do that. But if you're experiencing hot flushes, if you are having lower back pain, classic symptom of the loss of estrogen, because estrogen is an anti-inflammatory and a lubricant.
Yes.
We get a lot of joint pain in our shoulders and in our base of our spine, particularly, in other areas as well. But our sacroiliac joint really relies on estrogen. So one of the things we do in Menopause Yoga is we do a lot of pelvic floor work in two ways. Very simple cat-cow movements, arching, rounding the back walls, and hip circles. We were very lucky. We had a specialist in pelvic health come and inform us on how yoga can work with pelvic health. So we have some very specific movements around that. And then the other aspect of pelvic health is the breath work. So with our breath, and we all were taught our Kegels, like when we gave birth. But in fact, with every breath, we can tone our pelvic floor. And gosh, I mean, 50% of women are going to suffer some kind of stress incontinence as they go through menopause. Half of us. We kind of think,
huge amount.
Well, it's just one of those, it's one of those things, another thing I have to deal with as being a woman. Put a pad in, carry on. I'm fine, right? Don't need to be. We can improve that. We can tone that. And one other thing I would say is that also there's a very high risk of having a prolapse in that area. And next time anyone goes and has a smear test, I would highly recommend asking the nurse, have I got any signs of prolapse? Because again, there are things you can do about it. So pelvic floor tone with the breath. The pelvic is like a diaphragm. So it sits here. This is our I can't see because it's below, but say that's my pelvis. That's my diaphragm under my lungs.
Yes.
And when we inhale, the breath presses the diaphragm down, presses the pelvic floor down, so it puts pressure on it. So when we inhale, we want to relax the pelvic floor. When we exhale, they both rise up, and we want to encourage that tone of the pelvic floor. So inhale, relax the pelvic floor. As we exhale, we draw it up and we tone it.
Oh,
So
very interesting.
it's so interesting, and it's a very subtle movement. So we guide through this in the breathing as we move, and toning our pelvic floor in this way is super helpful for stress incontinence, for that kind of
Yes. God, how brilliant. We all need to be doing this. And also, I'm guessing this yoga and this breathing, it must seriously help with sleep problems, doesn't it? I mean, do you think if you're having, I don't sleep that well, but you know, trying to get to sleep and your mind's whirring and you know you can't relax or sort of get a proper breath, I guess those breathing exercises would be beneficial then, would they?
Absolutely. And we have a specific practice for that. It's actually a meditation practice. So it's a very, meditation sounds, I think, particularly to people who don't do yoga, sounds a bit scary, but it's not. It's a very light touch. It's actually just combining breathing with a little bit of focus on your breath, a little bit of so we move through our fingers with a mantra, or there's lots of different ways we can do it. But that going off to sleep and then staying asleep is absolutely vital to our resilience for the rest of the day, to the next day. And so sleep and stress are two things that we need to, that it impacts on all of our other symptoms, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, it helps enormously, and we could do another whole conversation about
it's so fascinating. And when would you say one should start doing this menopause yoga? Because I, for instance, have absolutely no idea, 46, whether, you know, I'm getting to that stage or not, or perimenopausal. I mean, I guess, do you just start when you know, whenever you think you're ready or should? I guess it's good to get ahead of the game, is it?
So you've answered your own question. That's absolutely right. So I wish I'd known what I know now. I'm 51 now. I think I'm coming towards the end of my perimenopause. My periods are beginning to be very scattered. But certainly in my mid-40s, I had whirly brain. I found my sleep was absolutely awful. I mentioned some of my other symptoms as well.
Right.
It's very likely that, I mean, your hormones will be fluctuating.
Yes.
And
I've definitely got whirly brain.
You know, it's one of the things that that we really want to pay attention to, because we can help it. And so I always think even earlier, because when you're in your summer, you're in your adult womanhood, you're still having these cycles, these monthly cycles.
Yes. Yeah.
And with those cycles, we bring certain things to those. So some people get heavy premenstrual tension. Some people get a little bit of brain fog or a little bit of anxiety around beforehand. And whatever we have in our womanhood, in our summer, is amplified as we come through into perimenopause. So those things can often be the things that start to grow. So for me in my summer, I'd have one day before my period that I knew I should not make any decisions. Because my brain just wasn't functioning in the right way. I just went a bit doolally. So I never booked any meetings on that day. And I now look back and I think my indecision became a constant thing. So it amplifies what we bring through. So to notice your cycle, to be aware, to know that that's important in future life, to notice your cycle then is really important. To start journaling is another thing, making a note of how we're feeling and of the cycle and symptoms of it. Yoga, I mean, I would suggest a yoga practice to everybody at every stage of their lives. So,
absolutely.
And certainly to prepare us for this transition, it's so wonderful to have it established already, because actually when you're in the heat of it, it's hard to see the wood for the trees. And so to learn it in advance, I mean, you're a wonderful stage pounder to learn it now. and
Yeah,
you've got it there in your toolbox. You might just tuck it into the back pocket for now. But
absolutely.
you'll know then, you'll be ahead of the game, so that when something happens, there'll be this trigger and you'll be able to say, okay,
Yeah,
I've heard of that. Let me explore that. Let me listen to it. Yeah, let me notice it. And then I can do something
about it.
Because the doctors, you know, I went to the doctors 4 or 5 times. They have in all of their medical training, they're only given a 2-hour PowerPoint presentation on menopause.
Not very much at all, is it? It's nothing.
They don't stand a chance of diagnosing.
No.
So it's
Such a major part of women's lives.
yeah.
It's really not enough, is it?
Well, this is it, because, you know, and I think our bodies haven't caught up with it either, let alone medical training. Because back in, you know, I was talking about the olden times, women were still going through menopause at an average age of around 51 is the average age. Obviously, it varies wildly, as we said.
Yes, yeah.
And it was the same back then. But women were dying in their late 40s, early 50s. So the bodies didn't have to go through supporting themselves with this loss of hormones. We're now living till our mid-80s.
Yes.
We've got a third of our lives.
So we've got to deal with it.
We've got to be able to step through into that with strength, vitality, with joy, because it's such an exciting time, that post-menopause time, where, in fact, you know, we work through our families, our bodies have, you know, if we've chosen or been able to give birth and raise children, that kind of, you know, our bodies come back to us.
Yeah.
Time for us. It's a time for dreams, a time to really explore. It can be a really exciting time.
Yeah. And your workshops, do you find people, are you recommending a certain number of sessions? Is one session enough to go away with your sort of, you know, tools to do stuff at home? What would you say is the best
the optimal way? The workshops are standalone, so the idea is that you're given a toolkit to take home with you, which you can then explore. You can draw yoga into your life. There's so many options of yoga out there, but menopause yoga is quite gentle. As I say, it's quite yin based, restorative based. When we're doing yoga for anxiety and overwhelm, it's like a somatic movement. It's very slow meditational movement. So it's quite specific, and there are about 300 teachers now worldwide who've been trained in this specific style of yoga. So I offer my classes, I do my workshops standalone, and then I invite my students to come to my in-person workshops. I'm based in Rye in East Sussex, so right down the bottom of the country. But I also do a weekly Zoom class as well. So we can continue the physical practice, the breathing practice, meditation, and the restorative practices through those Zoom classes.
Fantastic.
And then, you know, and then there's always an opportunity. So I offer an opportunity at the end of the Zoom class for a women's discussion. So if anyone wants to stay on and talk about some symptoms, we do the practice, and then there's an optional 15 minutes to have a discussion afterwards and bring something to, you know, to discuss, which is really nice.
Fantastic. And do you, is there sort of, so these tools, or say are there 3 moves or poses, is that what you call them, that you would recommend, you know, a top 3 that are taken away and practiced, used at home? And how often should one do this in the ideal world, if one had time to?
In the ideal world, to nourish and nurture ourselves and give us our moment, these mini pauses during the day, I would encourage you to build them into your daily life.
Yes.
When we wake up in the morning, a little bit of stretching is amazing for our spine, for our mind, for our energy levels. And that's as simple as doing a few cat-cows, a down dog, and a bit of stretching, and a little bit of twisting.
Yes.
We can give you that as part of the program. You get a sheet, so you get a morning sequence and an evening sequence. And there's little pictures of the poses, and you can take those.
Fantastic.
Add in the little mini pauses during the day. And then if you can attend a class and do something bigger and fuller, I mean, I have to say Pilates is great. Anything that you can do to move is great. So yoga, mind, body, spirit, it does all of it.
Yeah.
But we also, at our age, we should add in weight training and weight lifting as well. So, but not the crazy hour-and-a-half HIIT programs, you know,
No.
that people do, because we don't need that.
No.
I have a pair of dumbbells by my kettle in my kitchen.
Yeah.
And I'm doing squats and lifting weights 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Empty. And it gives you that rush. It's a really great mood lifter, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yes.
How brilliant. Thank you. And Jojo, we discussed earlier that you're going to very kindly offer a grapevine yoga workshop at a date which we need to agree, obviously, and so members will keep you posted on this, but something that everyone can join if they would like to.
I'd love to do that. We do it on Zoom, and it's a wonderful opportunity just to explore some of the things we talked about, to share a practice together, and you know, just to see what it's all about and learn a bit more about where you are at with it.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea, and I'll most certainly be joining. I think it's a great idea.
I love that.
Thank you very, very much. I think everyone will have found that so fascinating, actually. And I think it's given a lot of people food for thought. And there are so many of us who are in this age bracket where, you know, it'll be so useful.
It's such a pleasure talking to you, Panda. And I'm super happy if you want to share my email address, if anyone has any questions that have risen up out of this.
Okay, well, that's so kind.
Happy to take any questions.
Well, I'll put that in the information with the recording for people if they'd like to ask you anything.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Take care.